Just a Job is the podcast for the modern woman to redefine what success looks like. We highlight real women and their real stories.
Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Welcome back to another episode of Just a Job. It is bright and early for Miss Ellen, and honestly kind of early for me on a Sunday, but it's like 7:30 for Ellen right now. We're recording this the day before because sweet Ellen has been blessed with a cold that has just put her out. So we're thankful that we get to have Ellen grace us with today's episode. I missed y'all last week. I didn't get to join even though I was there in spirit, but we're going to keep today's intro short and quick. I went to a baseball game last night and then also too just like with the Olympics, and it got me thinking. I feel like, with athletes, they have a hype up song like before they go to bat, or like, I don't know if they just need to like have a little zhuzh in their day. Ellen, if you were about to like go into a meeting or like commuting into work and this is like the one song that gets you going, what is it?
Oh my God. I would have to say this is really aging me when I say this. I used to be obsessed with the song Caribou Lou by Tech Nine, and I could like literally rap all of the words, which is also a fun fact about me.
Okay, that's
But I
amazing.
would have to say I love that song. Like that song, if I'm like not in a great mood, I feel like that song will perk me up in any way, shape, or form. What about you?
That is such a good one. And that's like such a classic to know all the lyrics too, honestly.
It's a fun party trick.
For me, anything Galantis, but definitely like peanut butter jelly. I feel like by Galantis, it's just like one of those like everybody knows the lyrics and I could just like literally groove to it at any point, at any time.
Have you seen or been watching the US version of Love Island? In like the first episode, they have a Galantis song. I came here for Love Galantis. I thought so. And one of the guys, and they're like panning.
It's Segala.
Darn it. Okay, I was close.
Same. Yeah.
And they like pan to each of the participants, and one of the guys is like jumping around with his suitcase. That's it. That's what that made me think of.
Also a banger of a song. But before we head into today's episode, maybe take a pause. If you're listening to this on your commute, great, but maybe cue up like your favorite, go-to banger song to get you going for the day or however and whenever you need it. But
love that.
Ellen, any parting thoughts for you before we head into today's episode?
Nothing super exciting. I apologize for what I sound like. This is actually the best I have sounded all week, believe it or not. So, sorry for the jump scare with like this demon voice I have over here. Thank you everybody for listening. And I also have been loving all of the social engagement that we've been seeing, like on Instagram and stuff. So thanks everybody.
Yay. All right. Well, with that, enjoy your Monday. Have a good week and we'll see ya. Bye.
Hi, everybody. We're going to go ahead and jump into an interview with Ashley Chang, who I cold message on LinkedIn. And I feel like people either don't use LinkedIn or read a message and don't respond. So first of all, thank you for replying to my message. But Ashley Chang is the co-founder and CEO of Sundays, an executive assistant service for working parents. She's on a mission to accelerate parents in their careers while creating more quality time for family. Before starting Sundays, she worked in the technology industry across all stages of companies. She was the first employee at a developer tool company, ReadMe, and helped scale Carta's venture capital business from 10 to 100 million plus. Wow, mic drop, look at that. Welcome, Ashley, to the podcast. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you so much, Ellen and Sarah. I'm so excited to be here.
Amazing. So Sarah and I think, have found some interviewees now through LinkedIn stalking. And again, that is the story of how Ashley came to be on here. And as I was doing my scrolling through LinkedIn, I came across Sundays and I was like, what is this company? This is so interesting, and found Ashley on there, and now she's here. So again, we're very happy to have you here and share your evolution. And I'm very interested to hear about this $10 to $100 million deal. So Ashley, let's start at the very beginning. What did you want to be when you grew up?
That's a really good question. I I think if I wanted to be anything, it was probably a doctor. My dad makes medical devices, and so I got to watch him growing up making, and he always worked in the startup world, so it was like a whole bunch of different medical devices, and I got to watch the things that he was building, and sometimes go to the hospital and shadow him. And then my grandfather also had a lot of health issues as I was growing up, so I spent a lot of time at the hospital, and um, yeah, wanted I think to be a doctor, and I studied genetics in college, which was kind of an outcome of that, like biology, medicine interest. Um,
Mhm.
and then as I got more into that, I learned how long it takes to be a doctor, and also wasn't super interested in like the lab work. I really love working with people and impacting people. And um, that's kind of what drew me to technology, being able to impact people more at scale and more quickly.
Yeah. Ooh, I want to interview and just get a like 100 count how many people, as a child growing up wanted to choose a profession that their parent was in,
Mhm.
because I feel like that's, the easiest way to learn. It's something that you're familiar with, but also too taking it in additional layers that you had that emotional connection to the health field because of your grandpa.
Mhm.
I'm really curious about college studying genetics. Holy cow. What was that experience like? And did you go into college knowing like genetics all the way, and did you stick with that for the full, 4 years?
I did. I really loved bio, and so I think that a lot of what you choose to do is just like what you're exposed to. And I think what I was
Mm-hmm.
exposed to was like healthcare, and then I had like a bio teacher that I really loved, so I was like, okay, I'm going to do biology. And then out of the options that were there, genetics was the most interesting to me because I kind of just wanted to understand like how do these things work at like a really basic level? Like what are the things that cause all of the outcomes that we see for how people behave and things like that. I mean, there's a lot of mixtures of behavioral things too that join with genetics, but I I stuck with it through college. I would say I was super interested. I love genetics and learning about it, but I went to UC Davis, which is like a research college, and so they're really focused on doing research and not really focused on like what are the career opportunities that are created out of what you study. And so as I was going through college, I kind of realized like most people who study genetics either go to med school or they do like lab research work. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to try this lab research work. The more that I did it, the more I felt it wasn't for me. It was super interesting, but it was like you're in a lab all day. You're not really supposed to be talking to people. Talking to people was my favorite part of it. And then um, the research that we were doing was cool. It was like we might be able to help do something for brain cancer in like 30 years. But the timeline was just really, really long for being able to have an impact. Um, and to me, I like to move at like a much faster pace with like a fast feedback loop. And so the further I got into college, the more I was like, this does not feel like the right path for me.
That's good you were able to identify that, though. I feel like so many people going through college just kind of, I don't want to say wander aimlessly, but to your point earlier, too, just whatever is in front of them is kind of what they gravitate towards. So knowing your kind of process of elimination going through that, that wasn't really the path that you were hoping to go towards, was there a specific title or industry or company that you were like, this is what I want to do? This is the job title I want to have post graduation?
So my after my junior year of college, I ended up interning at a company called WOTC. They do crowdfunding for healthcare in developing countries, and they're a nonprofit, but they were the first nonprofit to go through Y Combinator, which is a tech accelerator in the Bay Area. So they took this like very tech forward approach to the nonprofit space, and interning there was like my exposure to technology. And I also met a bunch of really awesome people. I learned like what is a software engineer? Like, what's a product manager? And one person in particular I really admired there. And she ended up going to another company and being like, a, her title changed a lot because it was a startup, but her ultimate title was product manager. And I was like, okay, I think that's the job that I want. It wasn't that quick of a thought process as I was experiencing it. Definitely took me a while to get there, but um, yeah, I ultimately got to that point, I think, by the end of the time I was graduating.
That would be, yeah, a big like mental transition, right? You're spending how much of your time and energy focusing on this. But I mean, I think that's the whole point of college, right? Like to assume that anybody 18 through 22 is going to stick with something for a full 4 years is just a very naive thought. So coming out of college, so you understand that you are really passionate and you want to pursue being a product manager. What was your first role out of college?
Yeah, so it was hard to get a first role because I was coming out of college with no experience in tech,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. So I applied to a bunch of roles, and at just like any tech company I had heard of, I was like, okay, I'll do customer success. I'll do like any of these entry level roles. What I ended up doing was a person I had met from WotC started a company. In the year that I was finishing school, and I reached out to him, and he was like, "Well, you can come help us like while you're applying to jobs." So I ended up that was ReadMe. I ended up working there part time for a little bit, just doing like literally whatever needed to be done. So in the beginning, that was like they had a backlog of like 500 customer support tickets, and like one person working on it,
Oh
and
man.
just the founder was there. So I was like, I'll come in and just like answer these messages. Like someone answering is better than no one answering. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I did that to start with, and then as I was learning more about the company and working with the founder there, I was like, I think I could actually be really helpful here, even though I don't have a lot of experience in anything really. And so as I was starting to like get a couple interviews at other companies, I approached him and I was like, I would actually really like to just stay here full time and see what I can do to support you. And he was like, yeah, let's try it. He was like, you've already been super helpful and I would love to have you stay. So I joined ReadMe. It was literally me and the founder for like the first couple of months. And then we hired another person, but really small for a long time. And I just did whatever needed to be done. So that was like customer support for a long time. It was like getting snacks for the office or figuring out like what we should do for like payroll providers, like a lot of just like solving problems for the business. Over time, I transitioned it into a product role where I was like, okay, I'm learning all these customer support things. Like, these are probably things that we should actually change about our product. Like, here's our. I also took a class at General Assembly, which is like they teach you kind of particular skills, and that was like in user research. So I was like, okay, I'm doing all this user research, and I turned that into my first like kind of product roadmap and feedback for our team for what we should build.
Ooh, I love that. I love that you got the exposure, right? Like, I'm sure in
Yeah.
the middle of it, you were like, what am I doing? I don't really have a defined role. What are my expectations? Especially post grad when like everybody else around you is kind of entering this pool and you're like, I don't know, I'm just kind of a Swiss Army knife. But now I imagine you have so many tools and experience in all of these different things. Like, I know that sounds ridiculous, but if somebody asked me to order snacks for an office, I'd be like, am I supposed to go to Costco or like, or down to like, yeah, what's the best payroll, or like, how do we support these 500, customer requests? So I think
Mhm.
that that's really cool that you got to have that, and to say that you were number 2 in the
Yeah.
business, also a cool mark. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, it was cool. I was
And
really jealous at the time of like my friends who were going into more structured programs. Like they were, a lot of them
Mm-hmm.
were going to like consulting companies or something where like it was like they knew their start date. They knew like exactly what they were going to be learning.
yeah.
And I was kind of like, I'm doing something like at a company no one's heard of.
Hmm.
But I think
Hmm.
that I did learn a lot about like working with ambiguity and kind of figuring things out for myself, which has been really helpful.
Yeah.
Totally.
And what an interesting way to like start out your career, being quite literally a Swiss Army knife, Sarah, like you said, and
Mm-hmm.
being able to apply that kind of anywhere that you would go afterwards. So how long were you at ReadMe? What was that like ramp up looking like to then go somewhere else?
Yeah, I was at ReadMe for 3 years. And it was really, I mean, it changed all the time. So, but for a long time, we were really small. It was like 2 people, then 3 people, then 4 people. Like at least the first year, I think we were only like 4 people. So it was me like doing a bunch of different roles that were like not really defined and then trying to figure out how
Mhm.
to do them well. And then after that, we started actually scaling a bit. So we hired, but that was mostly still on the engineering side. So there's a lot of like hiring and building the engineering side. And I think something that was really cool that I think most people don't get the opportunity to do is like I got to build the team culture a lot at that company at a really early stage. So yeah, because I had been there for so long, a lot of people would look to me as like, what are the standards for like how do we want to behave as a company? How do we want to support each other? Things like that.
Mhm.
Um and I feel like I got to be really involved in like setting the cultural standards for the company. Um and then something that was also really important to me was it's really interesting in this like developer heavy area that it's really, really male dominated. Like almost all of our customers were men, who were like engineering leads at their companies. And then we were hiring a lot of engineers. And so I felt like I got to be representation for bringing more women onto the team
Yeah.
and making sure that there was like a voice, trying to like make sure we were having a really broad and diverse like applicant pool for the people we were working with too.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple of questions on that. So you're young, you're brand new in your career, you are in a male dominated space, but also you're employee number two. So people are looking to you, right, for decisions and culture, like you said. What was that like being a young solo woman in a pool of men who were, I'm assuming, years of experience? Like, what was that experience like?
Um, and what I mean, I took it as kind of a challenge, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna be confident in these things that I do know and learn as much as I can. It was definitely hard in that there weren't like I didn't have role models at my business for like people who I wanted to be like. So I spent a lot of time kind of looking outside of the company at um, I joined this woman in product Slack group that was really active at the time, and I was like on that all the time. So I would be like asking people questions about things, and it's really interesting because I feel like during COVID, a lot of these remote communities have become more popular, but
Mhm.
actually that during that part of my career, like this one remote community was really powerful for me. And then I would meet up with people, for like drinks and stuff like that outside of work in San Francisco, and um, did was able to build like kind of a I don't wouldn't say I had like one mentor, but I had like a network of people who were women doing awesome stuff in similar roles that I could learn from.
Mm. Important. We always talk about mentorship, but I think that you
Mhm.
make a good point. It doesn't always have to be within this circle that you're constantly around, aka like the workplace. It's important to go outside of that and get exposed to people that you aren't, have like constant contact with.
Mhm.
Um, I'm just like picturing myself, Ellen. I don't know if you feel this way too, but I'm picturing myself like fresh out of school and, you're like eager and all these things. And then you get into this space and it's like all men. And there's always something to learn from anyone, regardless of gender or how they identify. But I think that that's like probably left a very good mark on like you and your experience and how you show up in the workplace. Going into, like creating culture, what are some, things that you brought to the workspace? I'm sure because there really wasn't like a ton, anything was really fun and exciting, but like what was one of your, personal projects or something that you really felt connected to?
Yeah, I would. It was interesting because everyone at the company was like pretty young, and I think that's like now that I'm older, I'm like, I don't know if this would work anymore, but like we would do like a Friday afternoon, basically like at like 3 or 4, we would just like all hang out and like have drinks every Friday. And that was really fun
Fun.
because I like got to know people a lot, and we would have like different themes for what we were gonna do, like different like personal themes. It was also interesting, like a lot of people at that company were like new to San Francisco, or like some people had moved from other countries. So um there was a lot of like this ending up being like our main community or like a big part of community that people had
Mm-hmm.
there. Um, and I think it was just a lot of like caring about people on a personal level, like checking in with them on a like daily basis of how are things going in their lives that are happening outside of work, because work is just a small piece of what's going on for everyone. Um, and I think making it so that people can share what's going on in their lives and know that like people at work care about what's going on for them, um, is really important too.
Mhm.
Definitely. Definitely.
And it's like something to look forward to, right? Like every single Friday, you've got time to, when the time rolls around 3, 4 o'clock, I can go and hang out with, assuming friends at that point, because that community that you're building. And if people don't know anyone else within the area, it's nice to be able to have that community, even if it is a part of work. And, it's a whole other conversation of separating work and friends. But
It is
getting
the whole
back
conversation.
to it's something with your time at README. Did an opportunity come find you, or did you go out and seek a new opportunity?
I ended up going to seek a new opportunity. I felt like, and I think at every point in my career, this is like when I've decided to move, is just when I feel like I'm like not learning enough. Like I really hate the feeling of being in kind of like a static place. I want to feel like I'm like moving
Mm.
towards something.
Mhm.
And at the time, I felt like I had like grown README quite a bit. We weren't growing at a fast enough pace where like the team was going to be expanding a ton in the next like year or so, and like my responsibilities would change a lot. And I also had been only at this really small company, and I was like, I want to know what it's like to be at like a real quote unquote real company, and like what does it mean to be a product manager at a big company. So I started looking for other roles, and I looked at like specifically product roles because I wanted to kind of have that experience in a more formally defined role, and where there was like a product team that I could learn from. And everything product I was doing at README, I had kind of taught myself and then been like, okay, this is how we're going to run things. But I think there is a lot to learn from other people. And so I started looking at more formal product roles. Um, at the time, I also kind of wanted to be at a company that like people had heard of, because I had been at this like tiny company for so long, and I wanted like some name recognition, I think. So I was looking
Fair.
at bigger companies, and I ended up going to Collective Health, which was about, I think it was like 500 people when I joined. Um, Later stage VC backed company and back in the healthcare space. And I had been was really curious about healthcare for a long time, getting back into it. So they do health insurance for self-insured companies. And then I did like their mobile app and website. And basically, if you were a member of like if they did insurance for Uber, then like as an Uber employee, you would log into our app or website instead of going to Blue Shield. And yeah, my
Mhm.
goal was like try to explain healthcare to people.
You feel that one, Ellen?
Yes. I used to work for a healthcare and technology company, and it was workers' comp and like musculoskeletal health and injuries. So really exciting stuff.
Yeah.
But it was fulfilling, right? And you feel like you're making a difference, improving someone's healthcare in some way, shape, or form. So I think that it versus maybe a more corporate traditional style. I'm speaking from experience when I say this, but it had fulfillment in that way, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think the reason I actually ended up moving on from Collective was more like I just got frustrated with the healthcare space because it's so regulated, and
Mm.
it was really hard to make like me and like every new person who came in was like, we're gonna make all of this change to healthcare, we're gonna fix it. And then like I was there for like 2 years, and it felt like we did a lot of making things like look nicer and fixing usability and stuff like that, but we couldn't actually change the healthcare system very significantly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine that would be pretty frustrating. Not on the daily, but you kind of look back and you're like, our hands are tied a little bit. We can make the
Yeah.
experience better, maybe like person to person, but at a national scale, there's not much that can be
Yeah.
done, I guess. But
Mm-hmm.
you fought the fight. You fought the fight. That's all
There you
that
go.
matters.
I'm curious what it was like going from the teeny tiny company to like a mid-sized company. You were seeking that out. That was a goal of yours. Were you satisfied with the bigger company? Did it kind of scratch that itch that you were looking for? What was that experience like?
Yeah, it was really interesting because Collective, um, even though it was only 500 people, which is not that big, their leadership team came from like really like SAP and really big companies. And so they acted like it was like the polar opposite, where they had much more like bureaucracy for I mean, you would expect that at a bigger
Hmm.
company, but the extent to which it was like that was surprising to me. But I went into like a really amazing team at Collective, and I I got hired by one person who I learned a ton from, and then he ended up leaving like 2 months after I joined. So I was kind of left on my own in this place of like figuring things out for myself again. But I got put with a really great engineering team, and so they actually taught me a ton of those skills that I was looking for around like how do successful teams run? Like, what does it mean to work well with an engineering team? What are like the pieces of building a product? And so I felt like, yeah, my team that I ended up working with was like what made Collective a really great place for me.
So it sounds like you got out what you wanted. You came in, you learned everything of how it be, my God, a successful product manager is. After the 2 years, what was the next step, and what were you looking for at that point?
Yeah, I was looking for a place that was like growing faster, basically. So I left Collective looking for, because of like all of the regulation and kind of having to figure out navigating the healthcare system. Collective was like not growing super quickly, so I wanted to go to like more of a high growth startup. I also wanted to, my two biggest things I was looking for was like a high growth startup. Ideally, I think when companies are not growing that fast at that size, it can get really like um, the culture is like not that great. Like it can get like people are frustrated and like people aren't necessarily like moving towards a goal together because they're just not sure what the goals are. So I wanted a company that was on kind of a higher trajectory path, where it felt like people were like moving towards the same goal. And then I was really looking for like a great manager. I felt like I hadn't had a person who was a really great manager before. And so a lot of what I was like interviewing for was someone I felt like I could really learn from. Um, and then I was really broad. I was like, healthcare has been frustrating. I don't need to stay in the healthcare industry. Let me go like explore all these other industries that there are, um, or all these other micro industries inside of the tech world. And then I ended up um, finding, I got a referral to Carta, and I met the person who ended up being my manager there, and just like fell in love with her. I was like, wow, this is a really smart person that I can learn a lot from. Like yeah, I really respect her. I can see the way that she thinks and that she's like really clear communicator. That was like the reason that I chose to go to Carta, was because of her. They were also like a high growth company. She was running this new business line for building venture capital tools, which was an area I didn't really know anything about, but felt like I could get in and learn, and I had like the product skills already to be successful. So I could grow with the company and with that manager.
We talk about mentorships a lot, or mentoring a lot. And I think you mentioned earlier too, really liking a team that you are with, and having that as well as having a manager or a boss that you respect and can learn from, I think are two like key pillars to staying at a job and job fulfillment and happiness. Like if one or two of those things aren't there, it's, I don't know, I think people struggle with that. Like, why would you want to go to a job where you don't enjoy the people that you are working with, or you're not respecting your leader, or you can't learn from them? So it's, I think it sounded like the way you described it, it was kind of like this serendipitous moment of the two of your paths crossing at the right time to be able to go on and learn from her. So getting to a question, what was like with working with that, I'll call her a mentor for now, but mentor and boss, what were some of the like key takeaways that you had and learnings that you got from being on her team?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there are just so many things that it's really hard to distill what the right ones are. Um, I think one thing that was really pivotal for me was that she would actually give me like really good feedback. And one of the things that she did in like one of our earliest kind of feedback sessions was, she was like, Ashley, we have these team meetings. It was like I was the only, no, there were two female product managers on her team and then like a couple of male product managers. But she was like, Ashley, I don't understand. Like we're in these team meetings and um, I know you have ideas and you'll share them with me privately. Like, why are you not speaking up in these team meetings? I think your ideas are really good. And I thought that was really helpful feedback, because I am kind of a person, or I've always been a person where I like to really think about something before I share it with people. Like I like to be like, I'm really confident that this is a great answer, and like that I have a plan for how this would work, and all of these like things, which I think is really common for women. Um, or like, I think women hold themselves to a very high standard for what things they're willing to propose.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, I think these are really great ideas, and I think you should share them publicly. Like, and basically pushed me to do that. And she was like, if you listen to some of the things that some of the male people on our team feel comfortable sharing, like those are not well thought out ideas, like, but they're getting credit for that because they're willing to share it publicly, you know, and so like they're participating in the conversation. And that you can only like become a leader on a team if you're actually like participating, and you have to like be a part of the conversation in order to like make an impact. And so I thought that was really, really meaningful feedback for me. And then once I was able to do that, I did like move into a leadership role in the team pretty quickly. And yeah, so just speaking up was really, really helpful. That was the takeaway early. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's so smart. Like, what's it like? Progress over perfection. It's just like,
Mm-hmm.
how can we at least get an idea out there, and it doesn't have to be, 100% thought out. It also makes me think of the fact where it's like women don't apply for roles unless they think that they meet 100% of qualifications, and men typically just apply because they think that they're just really good and are gonna get it.
Yeah.
But it sometimes it's one of those things where you don't recognize it in yourself. You just need somebody to encourage you and get it out there. And it sounds like that was obviously successful because it led you to a leadership role, which I have questions on. Was this your first time being like a people leader, or being in like a, I don't know, like titled leadership role?
Yeah, that was my first time formally being in a leadership role. I think that like at all of the companies I had been at, I had been in like somewhat of a leadership role. And also when you are a
Mm-hmm.
product manager, you're like leading an engineering team. So there's kind of like a
Mm-hmm.
leadership aspect to that. And at many times I had an
Yeah.
engineering team that didn't have like an engineering manager. So I was like kind of fulfilling medium
Yeah.
roles there, and
Mm-hmm.
intermediary roles. But this was the first time that I had like formally a leadership role with like people who reported to me and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I can feel it. Ellen and I are both project managers. And so it's like you just naturally become the one source of truth, and everybody's always coming to you. I know it's very different roles, but it's still just the idea of like, we're still hurting the group together. And so you take on this leadership
Yeah.
role. In jumping into leading, a specific team where you're very much responsible for them and their success, what are some learning lessons that you had, or what was that transition like of not only managing you and your workload and your product, but also then overseeing these team members?
Yeah. I think that there's a lot to learn in figuring out how to, so like it's I think the people who get promoted are often people who are like really good at doing things themselves, but like that means you're the person doing like all of the detail work,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, I know exactly everything that's going on. Um, it definitely took me some work to be like, how do I start to hand off chunks of the work that I've been doing to other people? And then also, how do I like monitor if they're doing it successfully or coach them to do it successfully without me like just taking over for them and being like, I'm just going to do it because I
Mm-hmm.
can do it faster. Um, so I think there's like a lot of patience that goes into it where you're like, okay, I need to actually teach them. It's like a whole new skill set. You're teaching someone versus um, just executing on something yourself. So I think that you have to like teach yourself how you're going to teach someone, or like observe how people teach people, and try to learn that. I just I tried to approach it with like a lot of empathy and like trying to understand like where this person was coming from, and then giving them like my philosophy on how I was mostly working with people who, my first employee who I loved, we're still a good friend. I'm actually talking to him later this afternoon, hopefully. But he came from like not a product management role. So I was like training him in how to do product, which was kind of really interesting for me to like distill my own thoughts on how to be a good product manager and teach him that. And then to kind of coach him at different aspects and be the person who's like giving more feedback and being like, when is it right to give feedback? Oh, it's so awkward. Like what, how do I put myself in a position to feel like comfortable and like this is the right thing to do?
Mm.
I especially laughed at the how do I learn how to delegate something to someone else when I know I can do it faster? And I'll just do it myself. I struggle with that so much. So I'm like, I see you on that one. I
I feel it.
absolutely
Yeah.
resonate with that. Yes, 100%. So you're managing a team, you are growing within your role. The company was you said a quick startup. Quick startup? Is that the word? What was the word you used?
I think I said high trajectory, but, or
High
is that what
trajectory.
I said?
God, I can't talk. High growth. That's the word I'm looking for. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You're growing in all areas. Your role, your company, the product, I'm assuming as well. What was that like managing the quickness of it all? Did you enjoy it? Was there ever a point where you were like, holy crap, what's going on? Or were you like, I'm along for the ride, let's go?
I kind of love it. I like when things are, I'm reading this book actually right now on like delegating, and it talks about how like sometimes people are like addicted to chaos. I think I'm definitely a person who like likes when things are moving really fast. Yeah, now
Hmm.
I'm like, yeah, I need to figure out a balance there probably in my world today, but I like when things are moving really fast. So like I like being like in like things are changing really quickly. Like we have to change how we're doing everything, and I like that's my type of like things I like my ideal role. Um,
Mhm.
but it's interesting because that's not always ideal for the people who report to you, and managing how you communicate that change is actually a huge part of managing people
Hmm.
when you're at that type of company. Um, there were definitely times when I was like tired. I would say like by the time that I left Carta, I was like feeling definitely like I had been running at this really fast pace for a long time and that I was tired. Um, I also think it just depends on like, are you feeling really connected to like the mission of what the company is doing? And are you feeling like, at least for me, like, was I feeling like I was like making the impact that I wanted to? Or like, was working so hard worth it in terms of like making the impact on the world that I wanted to? And it's easier to stay
Hmm.
motivated when I feel like that is the case.
Mm. I have a thought, and I don't know if this is going to sound great. We can cut this out.
Yeah.
But in thinking about like why people leave, I think it's so fascinating to see either why people are pulled into different roles, some things on the other side that's like really exciting to them that they didn't really even have any interest in initially, or what's pushing people out. And it sounds like for you, you've always kind of had like a mix of both. You're like looking for something else and you get into that role and it gives you exactly what you're looking for, and then something else kind of like creeps in that you're looking for, and that's just like another side of your career. And I sit here and I think, I'm like, people who have been in the same role at the same company for 30 years or whatever, like, did these thoughts ever cross their mind? Do they ever have these kind of urges or itches that they want to
Yeah.
follow? Because I'm like sitting here thinking, I'm like, yeah, that's the same. Because like
Mhm.
I've been in a handful of roles, and you're just like, people don't leave because they just get bored. It's not just because I'm bored, I want to go to something else. It's like because I want to grow myself, because I'm not fulfilled in the industry. Like there's all these list of reasons, and I'm like, as you're going through them, I'm like, yeah, I've definitely felt that way. But that's just a side note, if you
Mhm.
will. So you're kind of teeing us up. It sounds like you're getting ready for a move. What was the next move?
Yeah. I so after I had worked at README for a long time, I did not want to start a company because I saw what it was like for the founder there, and I was like, that looks really stressful. But
Hmm.
then the further I got into my career, the more I was like, maybe I do actually want to start a company. So I had been at Carta for um, almost 3 years, and I was like, I can see what the next like if I were to stay here for 5 more years, I know exactly like what that path looks like. Um,
Hmm.
and I didn't necessarily want to like keep moving up the like product management leadership path, because the higher I got, the more political it got, and the less time I was spending on like the more impactful work. Even though I did really like managing people, so I was like, what else do I want to do? Maybe like I was also looking at my own life time frame. Like I don't have any kids yet, and I was like, now is the time to start a company if I want to because it's lower. I'm able to take on more risk essentially, and so I
Hmm.
ended up leaving Carta. I'm like a person who's like 100% into whatever I'm doing. So I left Carta without having really a plan for what I was going to start. I gave them like 3 months notice. And because I really love my manager there, I was like, hey, this is like the direction I want to go in. I want to give you a lot of notice so that like hopefully I can onboard someone who's going to be like filling in for me or like taking my spot. Um, and like it was like nothing to do with the company. Like if I wanted to continue on that product management path, I think that like that would have been the best role for me. But I was just like, as you were saying, Sarah, kind of feeling like excited or like pulled to just like try to do something totally different. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I left Carta. Um, I think it's really interesting if you hear like people who have started companies paths, a lot of times you hear like the very abbreviated version where you're like, it was so successful right away. I knew exactly what I was doing. I raised all this money. It's not like that. I left Carta and I took a few months kind of just exploring like areas to start, like I could start a company in, which was really
Mm-hmm.
fun. But you can think so much about like, oh, that could be a possible company or that could be a possible company and like get excited.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't really know until you start building it. So I did that for a couple months. I actually was originally working on a totally different, when I started working on like a company idea, it was totally different than Sunday is today. It was like a customer service AI tool. And I convinced an engineer that I had worked with before to work on it with me. And so we worked on that for a couple months. Um, it was really fun and we found we could actually like build the AI that we wanted to, which was awesome, but neither of us had like marketing or like sales experience. And then after we built it, we were like, oh, who's going to actually buy this? Like, we are not in a good position to be like distributing this to the people we wanted to. Um, and then ended up taking a step back and thinking about like, what problems do we really want to solve? And supporting women in the workforce has always been super important to me. Um, and I can get more into Sundays, but that's kind of how we got to the beginning of Sundays.
The ramp up to getting it out the door. You probably saw Sarah and I like laugh a couple of times during that, because before we landed on the idea of the podcast, we had this shared note on our phone of all of these crazy business ideas of, oh, this could be a company, this could be a company. And we would go get drinks and be like, oh, we could start this and this could be a company that we could do. So very much resonate with that conversation and that thought process as well. So how did you then pivot from the original like customer AI platform to then be like, I want to create something that supports women in the workplace?
Yeah, so we were building this customer AI tool. It was like working, it was a lot of engineering work.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, my co-founder's really an engineer, so like he's not going to do like the marketing and sales stuff. And so I was like, okay, I have to figure out this whole like go to market side of what we're building. And I could feel myself just like hesitating or like procrastinating on things that I knew I needed to do to like make this into a real business. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, why am I doing that? And then I was also kind of like getting like jealous of other people building in this like parenting, like supporting women space. And so when we realized the customer service thing it wasn't really like a good founder business fit, and we started looking at other problems, I was like, this is a problem that I feel like is calling to me. Like I care so much about it. Like I'm motivated on a daily basis to like reach out, like cold email people or like do things that are uncomfortable in order to make it exist in the world. Um, and so I interviewed a bunch of people. I interviewed like, I don't know, maybe like 15 people. And then I went to my co-founder and I was like, this is what I'm hearing. I think we could build this business. And he was like, okay, I'm open to it. So I'm really, really thankful that he was like open to making that like enormous pivot with me. And then we took a really research heavy approach to it where I talked to like 300 parents in the first couple of months we were building Sundays, and um, to figure out like what exactly do we want to build. And originally we were looking for more of like a tech product because that's our background. But the more people I talked to, the more it was like a piece of technology isn't necessarily going to be impactful enough. Like what they really want is more time back. And we decided the best way to do that is like with a trusted human partner, and back them up with a little bit of technology. So yeah, what we do today is we have a team of executive assistants. They are mostly other parents. And so each family we work with works with one person on our team, and super relationship driven. They like get to know you and your partner and your kids and what your goals are. And then they proactively can help manage all of the like life ops that it takes behind the scenes to keep things running.
Ooh, life ops. That's the perfect way to describe it.
I love that.
I love that. Sometimes I hear like mostly women talk and say that they're like the project managers of their house.
Yeah.
And I think that is so true. That's so true, right? And there's so much that goes on in making a house a home and just completely operational and functional. And it's funny because it's not funny. It's very eye-opening. Growing up, whether you're exposed to it or not, you'd have no idea that all of this stuff is going on. There's always cleaner in the cabinet. There's always paper towels. There's always toilet paper. Like it's just like always there in, most homes. And then you become an adult and it's like, well, who is doing all of that? And you're like, oh
Yeah.
my God, somebody else was responsible for that. And, I think nowadays more parents, I mean, I'm literally just repeating everything that you probably already know, but I'm just going to share my own thoughts. But it's like so many more parents have to be both working parents. The idea of juggling a full-time job, a house, a pet, one to however many children, like there's no way that you're going to be a happy, healthy human and show up 100% for everything in your life. So I think
Yes.
this idea is just honestly so fucking genius. You've got it.
This is so funny because Sarah and I we started new jobs around the same time and had to go into the office from previously being remote full time. And we both have a husband and a dog and a house. And we were joking like, oh my God, I can't even keep my house clean and I'm responsible for myself. Sometimes my husband and my dog, like, how do working parents do it? Like, we even had a podcast episode talking about this and like talking about how we felt like we couldn't even sit down and have dinner until 9 o'clock at night. And so this company is so like, what a perfect niche. I get it. Like, I also was a nanny in my previous life. And so that like executive assistant piece, I'm like, I know all the things that I did. And that was a whole full-time job that I did for another family. And same thing, both of the parents were working. And nowadays, with most families having both working parents and then kind of getting on the topic of like the mental load around things, which I know is like it's new to me, new like topic of all of the things you have to do around your house. I mean, like Sarah and I experienced that again without kids. Like, it's crazy to me. It's so interesting.
Yeah. My mom is actually visiting in town and it's like this topic of conversation comes up all the time. And anytime it does, I feel like I just need to squeeze my mom and kiss
Thanks,
her on
Mom.
the cheek and give her just a big old hug and just be like, thank you for everything you ever did to me. Like I feel like a little brat for just being so ungrateful, but it's just because it was done and you didn't see it. So obviously Ellen and I don't have kids. We have not used your service, but we understand and see the impact that it has. What was it like for you to bring this to life, especially knowing that you also too shared the same sentiment and have, that emotional connection to it?
Yeah, I mean, um, it's a lot of work to actually bring it to life, but it's really, really motivating because I do like all of our sales calls right now, which means like multiple times a day I talk to usually moms who are just like amazing humans. They're doing they're running families and oftentimes they also have like really big jobs that they're doing impressive things like all over the world, and I get to talk to them about like how they're doing it. So I'm learning a lot, and I just feel really lucky to like be able to have a business in this part of the world. Um, Bringing it to life has been a lot of experimenting. Like we did all of those interviews, and then you have to, once you interview people, be like, okay, how do we actually fill this need? Like, how am I going to solve these problems for them? So we experimented with like a few different formats of how our team would work with families and like who we wanted to hire in different places. And then I would say towards the end of last year, so not even that long ago, we kind of got to this place where we're like, okay, this is like a model that really makes sense. We know the type of people we want to hire. We know the type of clients that it works well for. And so this year has been a lot more of like scaling that. LinkedIn is like our main marketing channel. So it found Ellen. So that's good.
It's working.
Yeah. But for me, like learning and again being in a position of just like having to learn a lot of things from scratch, so like figuring out like what does it mean to do marketing, how do we do it successfully, how do we measure success? Like for a while I would have all these blocks on my calendar that said like do marketing, and then I would be like, okay, what do I actually do now?
That's hysterical. Do
yeah,
marketing at 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock.
yeah. So it's been a lot of like just learning all of these different pieces of the business and then trying to bring them together. And a lot of
Mhm.
it is also it's a service, it's like a very service heavy company. So a lot of it is also like hiring and bringing great people onto the team.
Mhm.
Mm.
Can you share your biggest success and then your biggest not failure learning from launching your own business?
My biggest success so far, I mean, what's our biggest success? I mean, we are helping about 100 families right now. So I'm really happy that we get to
Amazing.
work with so many people, and most of them are really happy. So that feels like success to me. My biggest learning so far, I think my biggest learning about starting a company is just like that it takes a really long time, and that you can like read about it from the outside, but you're not going to really know what it's like until you're like there in it. And so um, I think that, yeah, I think that's actually a big issue with people who start companies and then aren't successful, is that like their expectations are just really off from reality. Like you expect that like in 3 months you're going to have a company that's like successful.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just like not, it takes like a lot of work and a lot of time to build something from scratch. And so that's been a big learning for me, and for me, and something I have to keep reminding myself is like it takes time, but we have like started to see some of those successes from the time and effort we put in, and that's really rewarding.
That's amazing. It makes me think, knowing that you have the experience of working in companies of all sizes, but especially that beginning with ReadMe and being number two, how many founders and CEOs nowadays also had that experience of working with a smaller company and were at least like a little bit exposed to what it's like versus
Yeah.
those that work at companies with like thousands of employees and then jump into entrepreneurship and they're like, oh my God, this is moving so slow, or like their expectations are just a little bit different. It sounds like it, having the experience that you did kind of set you up for this, but also too, I love the like full circle, of this, especially being that you started at small company, you were very early on in your career and you're like, okay, I'm done, it's only going to go up from here, I'm going to just keep growing company sizes and whatever. And
Yeah.
then now you're like employee number one, and that I think is a really amazing accomplishment, so kudos to you. I want to jump in, Ellen, can I steal it? Okay.
Of course,
Ashley,
steal away.
we got to jump in and ask about the biggest success of the company, but I want to know how you personally define success for yourself.
Yeah. Um, I define success. It's really interesting because this also plays a lot into like the type of company that you want to build. Like Sundays is not a venture-backed company, and we intentionally haven't fundraised because for me, I think
Amazing.
success is like I want to be building an impactful long-term company, but I also want to balance that with like having a life outside of work. And so I think that building something that makes a big impact for parents, that makes enough money for me and the people who work for the company to pay ourselves well, and then to also have like close relationships with family and friends is really important to me too. So finding a balance is my goal for success. And then I always just am trying to be in a position where I'm learning a lot. So that's how I kind of judge it on a day-to-day basis.
Mhm. Well, it
Love it.
sounds like you're on the right path so far. So kudos to you. I think we can go ahead and jump into some rapid fire questions.
Let's do
So
it.
I'll start. Ashley, what is one thing you cannot live without during the workday?
Ooh, I like drink so many different types of drinks during the day. Like I have like five different cups. So
Yeah.
I'll have
Mhm.
like coffee and then tea and then like a lot of water. So
Mhm.
having access to liquids is really important.
I always joke that I'm literally staring at 3 cups on my desk right now, and I swear I always have 2 to 3 beverages on my desk at
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
times.
I
Beverage
recently
girls
got this.
unite.
Yeah, I got this for Christmas. I got this thing. It's not like the Ember mug, but it's like a hot plate that goes on your desk, and you can keep like a regular mug on top of it, so it keeps your drink warm. So that's my new
Genius.
go-to. Dubai.
Okay.
Yep.
Love
I
that.
feel it. I feel that. Ashley, during your stint at the corporate company, what was one of your pet peeves that you experienced while there?
I just like hate standing meetings that have like no purpose to them.
Mhm.
Yeah, we would have like all these meetings that would be like every week where no one was even paying attention. And I was like, can
Mhm.
we just have a like what does this meeting exist for? Um, so yeah, that's my biggest pet peeve.
Yep.
Agreed. Agreed. I experienced that today. Agreed. Um, what is the best benefit that you ever had from working either in the corporate world or currently with Sunday?
Ooh, Carta had a benefit where they would pay for any books that you wanted to read, which was really cool. So like they
That's
didn't
very
necessarily have like an
unique.
yeah, they didn't have like a set education stipend, but you could just like have buy any books and expense them and read as much as you want. And I love reading, so it was big for me.
Oh, that's so nice. I feel like that's
Yeah.
one of the that's kind of one of those adult lies. Buying books, I don't care, fiction, nonfiction, books are expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, definitely utilize your library if you have one and it's
Mhm.
accessible. But holy crap, like if you just try to go and purchase a book, oh my God, let's not even talk about the books at the airport. They're like $10 more
Yes.
when you need it the most.
An
Okay.
unexpected expense as an adult, for sure.
Yes. But, if you're traveling for work and you can expense it, by all means, do it.
Mhm.
That's amazing. Last question for you. Do you enjoy working in person, remote, or we'll throw it in hybrid?
right now Sundays is all remote, which I like the flexibility of. I do think there's a lot of benefit of like meeting people in person. So I guess hybrid is my answer. We're fully remote and intend to stay fully remote though.
Mm-hmm.
I think that my dream is like you're mostly remote and then you see people for like a week at a time. So you still get like you get time together and it's like focused
Mm-hmm.
time. When I went back to the office, it was like everyone was still on Zoom calls all the time. So I was like, this is pointless. Why are we in an office?
Yeah. Yep.
Amen. Ashley, thank you so much for spending your time with us and sharing your story. We'll make sure to include all the places you can find Ashley and Sundays in the show notes. Thank you so much for your time. I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. And remember, at the end of the day, it's just a job. Thanks, everybody.